I have gathered the top 25 highest potential wonder kids on FM26, and I have put them all on the same team, locking them in at Preston North End in the Championship. And this is the test to see if they can band together as a team to go on and win a lot of trophies. The only downside is that I'm not allowed to manage them. That is up to the FM gods and obviously who Preston North End's board decide to actually take charge. So let's go ahead and see which players have made it into our Wonder Kid squad in FM26 at Preston. Now, kicking things off is, of course, Lamine Yamal. He's 18 years of age. He has the highest potential on the game, as well as 3 other players who also feature in the squad. And he is going to be our talisman, potentially from the right, maybe up front. Another notable player that makes it into this Preston side is Ayoub Bouadi, who of course is another player with that maximum 200 potential range, and he's a centre defensive midfielder or centre midfielder who's just unbelievable on this game. Now, the third and final key player that I'm going to show you is Pau Kabasi. Now, this is an amazing 18-year-old centre-back we all know at Barcelona, who already has the mental attributes to be probably one of the best defenders in the game, and with a model citizen personality. And that's just so underrated. This team could be unbelievable, but let's introduce you to the rest of the squad. And here we have the rest of the team. Now, how this is going to work is I have locked them in by giving them a future transfer in 15 years' time, which means they'll forever stay at Preston and never move club. I've also given them a bit of a transfer ban, so hopefully we don't see any transfers come in and want to take any of these positions. Now, I very much doubt at some point they will. We've got, obviously, goalkeepers. We've got Jonas Yerberg and Mike Penders. Pau Kabasi is alongside Lenny Yoro and Leone. We got El Halali, who looks like a really good right back in the game. Jorel Hato, Lewis Skelly. As you can see, these are just the best wonder kids in the game with the highest potential that I have gone through. And we're going to see exactly how they do in season number 1. And they are going to be led by this man. For now. Anyway, Paul Heckenbottom, who has potentially the easiest job / the most complicated job in the world, because if he doesn't get anything out of them, then he is gone. But if he does get out of them, he might have a job for life. He's not an amazing manager, but he's an alright one. However, his preferred formations of 5-2-1 is kind of worrying. I don't think that will work with the players that you've got. We'll see how he lines up. Well, it does look like he set them up in that formation still, with the 3 at the back, the 2 defensive midfielders, higher wing backs, and 2 attacking midfielders behind the lone striker up front. And as for the first season, it's an easy guess as to who stood out for the side straight from the off, as Lamine Yamal was the top scorer, picking up 30 goals and assists. Yildiz had a good season too, but Desiree Doué had a better one, as the only other player to record double figures in both goals and assists, getting 14 goals and 15 assists. They finished in 4th place in the league and ended up taking on Oxford United in the playoff semi-finals, where after a 1-1 draw in the first leg, they battered them 3-0 in the second leg to go to Wembley, where they went on to play Coventry City, who absolutely outclassed them on the pitch, scoring the only goal of the game off the back of keeping the ball so well right on the edge of the Wonder Kids box before a finish. A 1-0 loss in season 1 that will be hard to bounce back from. Now, one of the reasons why that might have happened is because Lamine Yamal didn't actually play in the playoff final. He was injured. He missed out on the game there. You can see the last game he played was actually against Oxford. Would it have been different if he was in the team? Obviously, he is probably, well, I say obviously, he's probably the best player in this Wonder Kid 11, but it remains to be seen for now. Kenan Yildiz obviously had a great season, as did Doué in behind them, but Kobbie Mainoo, good performance from Kobbie Mainoo. I didn't expect him to get into the team with the amount of great talents that we have here, but if you're looking by appearances, Jonas Erbig was the one who played the most, the goalkeeper of course. Kobbie Mainoo was the 2nd most appearances in the team. I'm quite impressed with that. Lenny Yoro, his Manchester United compatriot, also did play quite a lot. He has ridiculous pace and acceleration, so that's good to see. And Pau Kabasi was up there as well, which is great. If you're looking throughout the rest of the team, though, Warren Zaire-Emery playing quite a lot at right wing-back, which is surprising. Jorel Hato playing left wing-back, but can also play centre-back, because Miles Lewis-Skelly seemed to have played a lot of the season in defensive midfield. So, I mean, you can see that most players did play. The only one he didn't really was Jay Robinson, which is a shame because he's actually quite good. but he can only play out on the wings, and we haven't got a manager right now who plays with wingers, and that's potentially why Nwaneri hasn't featured as much, which is going to be a mistake. But obviously the likes of Esteval, who also has only played 1 start and 7 appearances off the bench, again a mistake. He's one of the players with the highest potential, as is Endrick, who starts the game injured, but he did play in that final up front. There's a lot to take in here. Buadi still played a good amount. Hopefully he develops nicely, because if we're looking to win, obviously, Premier Leagues, etc., he's the guy who's going to take that engine sort of position in the midfield. I'm excited to see Karabashvili in there, but he hasn't played a lot because he doesn't play wing-back. And this is a downside, of course, having the highest potential players in there. Might overshadow some of the ones that I'm really intrigued with. But for now, he keeps his job. Paul Heckingbottom keeps his job. Will he keep it Season 2? But one thing that was noticeably different in Season 2 was the amount of goals. Players weren't scoring nowhere near the same amount as Season number 1. Lamine Yamal and Yildiz was the top scorer, but with only 16 goals each, and there were only 3 players who finished in double figures. They underperformed in the Cups, only reaching the second round in the Carabao Cup, losing to Norwich, and unfortunately drawing Manchester United in the FA Cup 4th round, and lost that too. However, it was good news for Paul Heckingbottom and his Wonder Kids, as Preston find themselves destined for the Premier League after blitzing through the Championship as champions. So we are indeed going to see within 3 seasons how they do in the Premier League. So a lot of these players are still going to be fairly young, with the oldest being Jonas Erberg, who's only 23. So this team going into the Premier League is going to be interesting, but I am kind of concerned that the goals are not coming. And I don't think Paul Heckingbottom can pull off a miracle in the Premier League playing that system. I just don't think it will work. By the looks of it, they're just not hot on the pressing. I don't think it will work in the Premier League. We might see them struggle for a season. Now, because of the in-game editor, I have loaded through the current abilities and potential abilities, which you can do by right-clicking, insert column, and hidden down here. So I've actually also set the 4 players who have a maximum potential of 200 to that maximum potential of 200, because I thought that would be another little interesting thing that we can see should they make the 200. But I don't think anybody's going to do that anytime soon. Lamine Yamal is obviously the closest. Current ability-wise, he is the best player, 165. Not a lot of development yet within 2 years. Yildiz, 158. He looks great. Desiree Doué. So the attacking 3 that we've seen from last season is doing rather well. It's the other side that I'm kind of concerned with. Now, Luca Williams-Barnett, obviously, he's only 18, hasn't really developed at all. He hasn't got that high of a potential. And Karabashvili is also fairly low. So a lot of these players might not get the game time that they need to ever progress up until their potential. But a few of them should. I think we should see a fair amount of players hit that 160 to 180 potential range. And hopefully a lot of them are going to be in the spread out in terms of position wise. It's annoying because FM26 doesn't allow me to see what formations, etc., that Preston are playing. We're very limited to what we can see because of this. I can't even see the fixture schedule. It is that broken still. So we're going to go off of what we can physically do this season, and we're just going to have to go from there. Season 3 and the first in the Premier League, and where I thought Preston would struggle in a relegation battle, it turns out I could not have been more wrong. Paul Heckingbottom actually had them playing like a team that had been playing in the competition for years. Again, Lamine Yamal was the top scorer, but with only 16 goals, but the performances outweighed the stats, it seemed. Preston were a nightmare for the rest of the Premier League, and I think everyone underestimated them. They finished in 9th place in the league and on the same points as Manchester United, but above them even on their minus goal difference. However, they got to 2 cup finals. The Carabao was an amazing display too, and they won at Wembley to pick up their first trophy. But they also reached the FA Cup final too, and Newcastle were the opponents, and surprisingly the Wonder Kids took the lead after just 6 minutes, thanks to Lamine Yamal's goal. Newcastle wasted no time pulling it back level, scoring just 9 minutes later. But the winning goal didn't come until the second half, and it was a fabulous effort from Ramsey which ruined Preston Preston's hopes of 2 trophies. Looking at the players' seasons, you would have guessed that they were a lot worse than 9th place and 2 cup finals, but still, Yamal and Buadi continued to develop and cross that 170 current ability, with Lenny Yoro not far behind them. My main concern is the quality wingers. My main concern is that the quality wingers just not getting enough game time in this system. But with European football to now contend with, how will the Wonder Kids juggle playing in the Conference League as well as domestic competitions? Well, Yamal seeing a huge leap in terms of current ability, as well as Buadi too. And Yamal scored 23 goals and got 11 assists, but Rodrigo Mora was also up there too, with him also putting up solid numbers. They unfortunately got a tough break in the Carabao Cup 4th round where they exited 2-0 against Manchester City, and they couldn't get past Trabzonspor of Turkey in the Europa Conference League quarter-finals. It was Newcastle again who knocked him out of the FA Cup, but this time round it was in the semi-finals. However, they did so well in the Premier League, finishing in 7th place and finishing with 66 points while still under Paul Heckingbottom and his mad narrow 3-at-the-back system. I mean, it's hard to argue that they are doing really well. They've overperformed, I guess, to Preston's extent, but when you see the type of players that we've got now, I mean, Lenny Yoro is probably one of the best centre-backs in the world, and he's only 23. Buadi is just, look at that, that's disgusting, 179. And Lamine Yamal is up to 185 current ability as well. And look at all the chasing pack who are above 160 now. We were almost fielding pretty much 8 players who are above 160. And that's when really you should be starting to challenge for the league. So maybe he's actually underperforming. Maybe I've just talked myself into thinking that he is underperforming. But the performances of the players is alarming. Because goals-wise, we're just not scoring any. Considering our best players are our attack. And we have one of the best in the world, only getting 23 and 11. And I think he's been playing in quite a lot up front as well. Because, of course, he doesn't play in that attacking midfield role. Then, yeah, I am slightly concerned. Endrick has been getting, like, starts every now and then, as you can see, up front and still scoring goals. He's the one that's missed out the most with the fact that he's playing no wingers because Yamal is having to be occupying the striker role, whereas Endrick would have been doing that. And I think Nwaneri is probably the one that feels most hard done by not being played, because he can play attacking midfield as well, which is a shame because we all know how good Ethan Nwaneri can actually be. But the guys down the bottom here, I mean, we are not going to see them at all because they're just not developing very well. So, I mean, going into the next season, which would be season number 5, 7th in the Premier League, which is probably a Europa League spot. We can't tell because the stages thing doesn't show that anymore, which again is annoying. I hope that they bring that back. That was really convenient for us. But, I mean, right now, Paul Heckingbottom, you've just got to keep living with, you know, what you've got. And right now, there could be worse, I guess. I'm just so curious to see what would happen if we had an outstanding manager. But I'm not touching it for now. Paul keeps his job. Season 5 and Preston found themselves in the Europa League, but what was important is that they keep trying to push their position in the Premier League too, to try and reach the Champions League. Any cup competitions along the way would certainly be welcomed. However, again, as Lamine Yamal and Buadi crept into the 190 current ability, Yamal was still the top scorer with just 21 goals all season and 4 assists. Doué, Endrick and Mora followed close in the mid-teens for goals, but it was still underwhelming numbers. In the Cups, they were knocked out by Championship side Sunderland on penalties in just the 3rd round of the Carabao, but at least in the FA Cup, they made it to the semi-finals against Arsenal before exiting. In the Premier League, it was a great 6th place finish, being above Manchester clubs and Spurs in the process, but they were so unlucky losing in the Europa League final to Newcastle with 2 penalties as well. With the average age of the club now at 23, and a lot of players reaching high current abilities, it's actually got to the point where I think they are underachieving and surely trophies will be coming their way soon. Another season under Paul Heckingbottom in the Europa League for season 6, and the Wonder Kids are now at a point where they need to perform. And this turns out to be a strange season too, because despite Yamal starting 20 more games than Endrick, Endrick is the one who bags the most goals this season, with only 17, and it does seem like with a better system these guys would surely be scoring more, but Heckingbottom continues to keep his job for now, and it's more heartbreak for Preston. That's because they reached the FA Cup final against Chelsea and got absolutely battered 5-1. and what seems to be a bogey team in Newcastle knocked them out of the Carabao Cup again. However, they are the 4th best team in the Premier League this year. Now, they did also get to the semi-final of the Europa League. I can't see it, unfortunately, because the Europa League fixtures have now crossed over because of the date that we're on. But they got to the semi-final against Napoli. If you look at Napoli's fixtures, they drew 1-1 and then lost 1-0 to them in that semi-final. Napoli ended up losing to Premier League champions Spurs 2-0 in the final. So Preston have done well, but again, under Paul Heckingbottom, I do feel like they're really underachieving right now. We have got some class players, and they're just not hitting it in terms of performance-wise. We have the best player in the world. Ayoub Buadi at 200 out of 200 current ability looks absolutely insane, and yet we still cannot win the league. Lamine Yamal, only 16 goals and 9 assists. Not exactly good enough for somebody who is at 190 out of 200. 186 maximum potential for Lenny Yoro, world-class centre-back, unbelievable. Same for Kubasi there, who's at 179. Doesn't look as good as when I had him at Barcelona. Lewis Skelly, 178. We've got Endrick, who's actually done really well lately. The growth and development for him, because it did look like he might miss out. He got 17 goals this season. He was top scorer. He was above Lamine Yamal. He only got 5 assists, and he only played 23 starts with 18 off the bench, whereas Yamal started 43 times. The rest of the team, you're kind of just like filling gaps, and you can see like they're getting good game time until you get down to the bottom here, and then it's kind of sad, some of them. Probably from, I guess, Mike Pender's down, because Mike Bernal still had 21 appearances off the bench. These guys are just never going to grow now. Esteval as well is at 141 current ability. If we had wingers, he might have played so many more times off the bench. We could be looking at a world-class player by now, because, of course, he's got 200 potential. Same as Wanyeri. Barely played, and yet he's up to 152 current ability. I don't want to sack Paul Heckingbottom, but I feel like at some point we need to see what happens with this team when they don't have him at the helm. That's when I'm hoping we start to see way more trophies. In Season 7, there were slightly more goals than last, but still not the numbers I was hoping for. Yamal was back with the most at 23, but his development seems to have stopped at 190 current ability. Rodrigo Mora seems to perform well this season as the only player in double figures for goals and assists, but again under Heckingbottom, there's little to cheer for. Another early exit in the 4th round of the Carabao Cup, a semi-final loss to Leeds in the FA Cup, and a quarter-final loss to Bayern Munich in the Champions League, although we did knock out Liverpool on penalties and Red Bull Salzburg the round before. And it was a 5th place finish in the Premier League with 64 points. In terms of players, Yamal scored the most, but I'm concerned as to why he isn't rising from 190 current ability, while others are now catching him. And Buadi is the only guy chilling on 200, but either way, it's a good season for Mora and Endrick in particular. Season 8 was when everything changed though, and despite being under Heckingbottom and his hatred for wingers, something seemed to click with the players, and it led to some crazy results. There were still early exits in both cups. The Carabao was in the 3rd round to West Ham, and it was an even earlier in the FA Cup. It was also the 3rd round, but it's the 1st round that they were entered in. However, what you won't believe is how well they did in other competitions such as the Premier League and the Champions League. Because somehow Paul Heckingbottom has managed to take these guys to win the Premier League with just 76 points. An unbelievable achievement considering the top scorer was Yamal with 20 across the whole season. And he was also the guy that scored the winner in the Champions League semi-final against Bayern Munich as they knocked them out 3-2 on aggregate. Going on to face Real Madrid in the Champions League final, and it was a shocking start as they actually took the lead with a terrible goalkeeping blunder, failing to keep Buadi's shot out. Madrid fought back and regained control, scoring an equaliser through Kylian Mbappe. However, there was still one final twist, as the wonder kids who had grown up under Heckingbottom seems to finally understand the system, and Lamine Yamal bags the winner for Preston. What a phenomenal season. How has he gone from basically doing nothing to going and winning the 2 biggest trophies they could possibly win, with Champions League, beating Bayern Munich and Real Madrid along the way, and then of course going on and winning the Premier League as well, with a very low points tally, might we add. 76 points, which is fantastic anyway. But 27 players in here, not all of them really contributed to this. I mean, a few of them got some appearances off the bench. Karabashvili unfortunately never even played a single game, very disappointed. Neither did Mike Penders, but the rest of the team did very well. Lamine Yamal, 20 goals, 8 assists. It's so low, I can't understand how they've managed to win the league and the Champions League. We've even got some new gens who's like coming to, I mean, he's never going to reach the team, 139, so I don't even know why he's been put into the first team anyway. But even Desiree Doué's only played 20 starts. Rodrigo Mora, 28. Who is playing? That's what I want to know. I mean, I suppose there's so many good attacking midfielders, which is really why I was hoping there was a manager that would come in with a 4-2-3-1, because there's so many attacking players that are wonder kids this year. It's just inundated. The likes of Nwaneri, I know I keep saying it, not getting in. It's such a shame. And Esteval, of course, because he's been set to 200. And he's slowly getting better, I guess. Kobe Mainley scored some important goals. Miles Lewis-Skelly was always there, 10 assists. I think that was the highest across the season. It really was. Paul Heckingbottom, still within a job right now. But after that, I mean, he might get poached away. So who knows? Season 9 began with a couple of trophies as they won the Community Shield first, beating Manchester United 2-1, followed by the UEFA Super Cup defeating Spurs 2-0. However, what was a bit of a real twist was that it wasn't Paul Heckingbottom, as he left Preston and remained unemployed, while Anthony Barry took over as the new manager, leaving Chelsea for the role. And what was actually insane was that Barry got them cooking in a flat 4-4-2 formation that completely destroyed the statistics of the squad under Heckingbottom. Endrick scored 32 goals, while Mora got 25, and Lamine Yamal got 16 with 18 assists from the wing. And speaking of assists, Doué got 20, and Ethan Nwaneri even played and got 14 himself. They stormed through and won the FA Cup for the first time in nearly 100 years for Preston, in fact beating Ipswich in the final by 2-0, picking up another Premier League title, and rather comfortably this time round as well, scoring the most team goals in the process. But maybe most impressively is that they won the Champions League for a second time in back-to-back seasons, defeating the same opponent Real Madrid in the final again by 3-2. But this is much more enjoyable to see as well. The team stats that look like the world's best players, as a lot of them are in their late 20s now and reaching very high current abilities. And it's just nice to see the wingers was also getting some love after being ignored for the last 8 years. There was some heartbreak in Season 10, however, as on the second to last day of the Premier League season, a loss to Liverpool cost them from retaining the title. They finished in second place behind Arsenal by just 2 points. The stage was set though for another Champions League final, and this time it was against Barcelona. And they absolutely battered them 4-0 in the final, making it 3 in a row. And they repeated it in Season 11, defeating Bayern Munich 3-1 to make it 4 in a row. The downside was there was another Premier League runners-up, because Liverpool stormed it with an extra 10 points over Preston. And you're looking at Anthony Barry now, and you're like, well, how are you not winning the league? Although the 4-4-2 has definitely done us justice, and we're looking at the goals again. 23 goals each for Lamine Yamal, Endrick and Rodrigo Mora, and assist-wise, 15 was the most from Franco Mastantuono, who I don't think we've looked at yet. Again, he looks absolutely fantastic. So where are we going wrong? Why can't we dominate a full season every season with the best team easily in the world? It seemed the Preston board was asking the same questions, as Anthony Barry was then sacked after 4 seasons and after winning 16 cups and 1 league title. That was despite winning the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup that season, but finishing 4th in the Premier League and for the first time in a long time not featuring in the Champions League final. The player stats were still frighteningly high compared to the Heckingbottom days. However, Antonio Conte then came in and spent a season as manager before also being sacked despite winning a cup. And that's because you can expect a 4th place finish in the league and quarter-final exit of the Champions League to keep your job at Preston anymore. Especially when you're probably playing very defensive football, but I think I've discovered a problem. So you might have noticed that Preston haven't signed any players. What's up with that? That's because I set a transfer embargo when I did this database on Preston for the 15 years that they were obviously all going to be staying at the club. And that carried on until recently when it seems that there was a big board takeover. Now, when a board takeover happens, it wipes the transfer embargo. Again, I can't really seem to find where it is. It's one of those weird things on the game that we don't know where it is anymore because everything's changed. So maybe on landmarks might suggest it. I mean, what is this? Finance, there we go. New chairperson. It was a Tycoon Takeover 2036, which was 2 seasons ago, and we've started to see new players being bought, which is obviously a problem because then some of our Wonder Kids aren't exactly playing all of the games. They are buying good players, though. I mean, this guy, he's fantastic. They bought him for £60 million. He's very good, but he's not who you clicked on the video to see. We want to just see the Wonder Kids, so I'll do my best to cover as much as I possibly can. However, now that they're signing new players, I cannot physically stop it despite having the in-game editor on. I can't give them a transfer embargo this way. So into the next season, and it looks like Jossel is sticking around as manager for a second year, and finally a manager who plays 4-2-3-1. And we are back to seeing Preston and the Wonder Kids lifting the Premier League title with an all-round good performance combining well with the new signings. And it was a nice title win ahead of Manchester United by 4 points, as well as an FA Cup this season as well. And the 4-2-3-1 was providing us with some good statistics from the players too, with Endrick really shining. But the next season was where it all went wrong again, as they failed to win any trophies across the season, losing the league on the final day after doing so bad in the final 3 fixtures, and also losing in the FA Cup semi-final and the Champions League semi-final to PSG, meaning we have our 3rd sacked manager in a row. Now, we are seeing a lot more of the newer players coming in as well, so I'm calling for just one final season. Let's see who comes in and takes over as manager, and let's see if they can win some trophies with the remainder of our Wonder Kids, because if we're looking at age now, some of them are close to retirement, 36, 35 years of age. They are even dropping off quite massively in terms of current ability. It's a sad sight to see for the likes of Kobe Mainu, who was unbelievable and very instrumental in a lot of the trophies that they were winning. One final season, let's see what happens. Well, Vincent Kompany came in and was sacked halfway through the season, and for good reason too, as he failed to win any trophies, and in fact, the side finished down in 5th place in the league. Overall then, in their prime, this team absolutely cooked. But unfortunately, for the fact that there was a Tycoon takeover and they started signing other players, we couldn't see the full extent of what this team could have done without, of course, all of the other players. You can see a lot of them are new gens now. Lenny Yoro is still playing games. He's 35. He's still amazing. Endrick as well, getting 14 goals. Good for him. Lamine Yamal getting 21 and 11. Now at age 33. Still unbelievable. But I think it's time that we let this team carry on by themselves. I really hope you enjoyed this little look into the highest potential Wonder Kids all put in together. And if you want to see more challenges like this, let me know down in the comments. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. And here is a video on screen where I did 10 seasons with Barcelona. The likes of Lamine Yamal, Pau Kabassi, all in my team, Marc Bernal. See how they do with me as their manager.